Serious. What's the creepiest/strangest thing that has happened to you?
I guess I should start off by saying I don't believe in ghosts or spooks. I do believe that creepy things happen and that everything is explainable. But, after this incident, I really have no idea how to explain it. About 5 years ago, I was working as a photographer at a summer camp. I would frequently stay up late at night editing my pictures to make sure they were ready by the end of the week. One night I was in our office working on the photos when my boss came into the office and said that an adult guest broke his ankle and she had to drive him to the hospital. During this time, they were living at the camp wherever there was space for them. My boss and her husband were going to drive the guest to the hospital while their 2 kids slept in these elevated tents up on a hill in the woods. They asked that I go up to the tents and hang out until they got back, just to keep watch of their kids. They recommended I bring a blanket and pillow so I can catch some sleep, since they didn't know when they would get back. I walk up the long trail to get to the top of the hill and find the tent with their kids. I claim a bunk bed and lie down trying to fall asleep. A little while later I see a light coming up the hill towards the tent. I was glad that they had returned so I could finish my work and get to my own bed. As the light came closer, I noticed that something was strange. Instead of a flashlight beam, it seemed to be an orb of light, and it wasn't really bouncing like a person would carry a flashlight, it was just floating up the hill. On top of that, it was a very bright white light. Oh well, I was tired and glad they had returned, so I didn't think much of it. The light got closer to the tent until it arrived at the entrance. Then, the light just sat there, at the top of the entrance, which is about 6 feet off the ground. I thought it was bizarre that they weren't saying anything or coming in. I quickly realized that it wasn't my boss, and grabbed my cell phone to check the time. The time was 12:15 a.m. I then decided to shine the light on my cell phone at whoever was holding the light. As soon as I directed my phone towards it, the light disappeared. I was confused, but wasn't really worried. Could have been some younger counselors messing around, or the 4-H camp that was renting some space for the week, maybe just kids exploring the property. Plus, I was tired and may have dozed off and wasn't thinking straight. I then tried to go back to sleep. About 45 minutes later my boss returned. I then finished my work and went to bed. The next morning I was thinking about the light and how strange it was. I then realized that the light didn't come to the front of the tent, but to the back of the tent. The back of the tent faced a really steep hill, with tons of trees, brush, thorny plants, and poison ivy. I've tried walking through it in the daytime and it is extremely difficult and dangerous, let alone at night. Then I realized that it didn't make any noise as it came up to the tent. That afternoon I was telling a coworker about what I saw. As I was telling her, her eyes got really wide. She asked me if I was joking. I told her I wasn't. She then told me that the same night she and another coworker were outside the offices at midnight, and they saw someone with a flashlight approaching them. They yelled at it, asking who was there. They got no response. Who's there? Still no response, as the light continues to approach them. They get scared and run into the office, hiding while peering out a window. 15 minutes later it finally went away. When it went away it would have been 12:15 a.m., the same time I saw the light. Now to the next story. My high school GF called late one night after I was home and in bed. She said that something had happened and asked if I could come over. She was clearly shaken and not full of details. So I told my parents and drove over towards her house. At the top of her subdivision I was met by a cop with lights on. He asked where I was going and I told him about the call from my GF. He lets me go by and I come over the hill to the cul-de-sac where she lives and I see multiple cop cars around the circle. They watch me pull up and get out of my car. My GF comes running out of her house and meets me in the street. She explains that someone had broken into her neighbor's house and started beating her with something heavy. The neighbor managed to get out of the house and headed to my GF's house, where she started banging furiously on the front door. My GF's dad was out of town, so her mom answered the door and the neighbor just fell into the foyer bleeding profusely from the head. Her mom looks up to see the attacker headed up the walkway towards the front door. She pulls the neighbor into the house and closes the door, hitting the attacker with it before it fully closed. He then took the heavy tool he had used to beat the neighbor and smashed the little window at the top of the door. Her mom started screaming and the attacker just turned around and walked up the street into the darkness. I spent the night there that night, along with 2 or 3 cops outside in their cars, and in the morning we could see blood still pooled on the floor in the foyer and splattered blood above the front door from where the attacker had swung the bloody tool to smash the window. No one was ever caught or even identified. It was just completely random. The neighbor survived and, to my knowledge, had no permanent physical injuries beyond scarring from having her scalp stapled shut. She moved away shortly after the incident. Now, this one's kinda sad but wholesome. When I was learning to drive, my instructor advised me to always lock my car doors as soon as I get into my car. I asked her why and she told me her personal experience. This happened almost a year after she passed her test. She finished work about 3 a.m. She just gotten into her car and gotten her keys in the ignition when 3 guys jumped into her car. She had a knife to her neck and was told to drive. They give her directions to an alleyway. They dragged her out of the car and awarded her. After they were done with her, they left her in the alleyway and stole her car and purse. It took her a while to get help. Police did find her car a few days later, abandoned and on fire, on the outskirts of the city. But the guys were not caught. The reason she started to teach driving was her way to protect other women and make sure no one else goes through what she went through. So she advised all her female students to lock their car doors as soon as they get in. Edited by OP. Wow, I wasn't expecting this comment to go this big. I'm still in contact with my instructor via social media. I sent her screenshots of this comment and the other comments. She is happy that her advice/warning is out there before she retires for health reasons. She wants me clear misunderstanding that she saw in the comments. She does give the same advice to her male students and she does tell them her experience, but leave out the R part. She does get messages from her past students, including me, saying thank you for the advice/warning, and we tell her about our close calls. A message of her thank you for sharing your experience and advice so that others can be safe and they don't go through the same experience. What do you think of the first story? Do you think it's true? I feel the rest too are believable. Comment your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.